We are back.
We're back.
So today we're gonna talk about our setup here,
Okay.
but why don't we start with what you said the other day, which was had to do with life expectancy.
Oh, okay. Well, it was an article I was reading, and they said that, a lot of people think that when you get to 50 years old, that's half your life,
Mm-hmm.
because 50 is half of 100. But the article brought about the idea that, a lot of people don't make it to the 100, to 100 years. That in reality, instead of being 50-year the half-life, it's somewhere around 30, 33, 35, somewhere around there.
Wow.
That's your half-life. And so that even took me by surprise, I'll tell you that
Yeah,
much.
like the idea of a midlife crisis was usually someone in their 50s
Right.
who wanted to get a Corvette or something, but it's actually not. It's someone in their 30s if you go based on how life expectancy in the
Yeah, the
US,
mortality tables.
which is crazy. And
It is crazy because I'm 64. Where does that leave me?
And yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm 32, so
So you're there already.
I'm half the life expectancy, which I looked it up because I wanted to make sure. And the CDC August 31st, 2022 released that this life expectancy average is 76.1 years.
Wow.
76 years old.
So
on
that's
average.
33 on average.
Yeah, yeah. Can you imagine that?
The interesting point in that is that you can't get caught in those statistics. That's number one. And number two, um, you're not talking about quality of life. If you put quality of life into it,
Oof.
okay,
That's another discussion.
it is another discussion because there's no guarantees that you're going to make it to the age of 70 with any kind of decent quality of life. There's no guarantees
Exactly.
of anything anyway. But as we get older, you realize that you can't do some of the things that you were able to do when you were younger. And that's for sure. And that's no secret. And everybody knows that. And so,
But it puts things into perspective because as a 30-year-old, I feel like, oh, I got a long way to go. I don't really have to think about, dying anytime soon. However, the reality is that, well, first off, anything can happen. And I come from an industry, the life insurance industry, my previous career, that I was seeing death a lot, right?
yeah.
Because if you're in that industry long enough, you start to unfortunately see the people that benefit by having a life policy, which is the family. So I delivered several checks to families. Well, on that topic, I think it formed me because at a very early age, and I remember this family and their friends to this day, I delivered a check for a 25-year-old kid.
Okay.
I delivered it to the mother.
Oof.
That was one of the most difficult things I've ever faced. And I was only like 26, 20, or maybe 27, 28. I was in that age range. And
He
Oh
could have
my
been
God.
your brother.
yeah. Well, yeah. His mom said, if my son wouldn't have had this condition, he could have been like you, working and productive. And so we formed a bond. And, I call her every once in a while to say hello and check in on her, but it was devastating.
Oh.
And I don't want this episode to be a negative or a sad one. This is about realizing how fragile life is.
Right.
But we talked about quality of life, and we were sharing with our friend Elia the other day that your father, my grandfather, lived to 89 years old,
Right.
never used a cane, never needed a walker or anything. He was walking straight, and he got to enjoy Domino's and Cuban coffee the night before
Right.
he passed,
That-
right?
right.
And we were saying, wow, that's the goal, is to have a quality of life. Because you can make it to your 70s, but if at age 50 or 60 you're already, unfortunately, dealing with a lot of health issues,
Or bedridden or something.
you're not
Yeah.
able to truly enjoy those years, your golden years, which was the retirement years, right?
Yeah, I had a client that would come in to make his insurance payments, And I would always mess with him, and I would say, "How you doing with your golden years?" And he goes, "They're not golden. They're not golden at all." you know. And so,
It's
yeah,
false advertising.
yeah, false. You do the best you can,
Yeah,
and I think being positive has a great deal to do with quality of life, because
absolutely.
staying positive mentally, it's extremely important, because I think sometimes we bring things onto ourselves. If you're always negative, if you're gloomy, if you're this, if you're that, it's not a good recipe.
But for the person that's going through something difficult, how do they turn that into positive? Because when you're going through something difficult, unless you have somebody that is in your life that is trying to uplift you and give you like we feed off each other's energy. Some days maybe I'm a little bit, you know, more down and you're a little bit more positive, or the other way around. Sometimes you got a lot going on and I'm a little bit more. And so since we work together, it works out nice. But for somebody that, how would they deal with that?
Yeah, it must be difficult. A lot of people fall back on faith. Faith is a great power to, push people forward.
Mm.
Uh, you know, a lot of people do a lot of reading. Reading is also very powerful because it keeps you busy.
Yes.
It keeps your mind going. The last thing that we should lose, I think, is hope.
Yeah.
Hope is a very important word that we can do. I know that there's a lot of people, if at all possible, if they can do some kind of exercise. Exercise is a very
Physical
important.
movement.
Huh?
Physical
Yes.
movement.
Yes, even if it's just walking. Walking is a very good form of exercise.
Yeah.
So exercise is also a way to deal with some of this,
Yeah.
maybe depression, and not only do whatever you can, but if you can do exercise outside, in the fresh air, get some sun, get even wet if you can. It's a rainy season now, but
I think
there's a lot of ways to deal with it. But having the support of the family,
yeah.
by far, can be most likely the most important
Yeah.
thing.
Sometimes you need somebody.
You don't feel alone.
Yeah, you need someone to lean on.
Yeah.
Like the song says.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I've noticed is that certain people build a community. So, for example, at a certain age, you start to volunteer maybe at a local shelter, a local church, some sort of community that you build, art community. You get this hobby, and then it gives you a reason to get up in the morning. Because I think that's one thing, just from my perspective, when I see people that are in their 70s, 80s, it could be at any age, but they have a reason to get up. Like, I was sharing with you about the gardening class. Now I'm a certified gardener.
Oh, wow.
But the people that teach the class are master gardeners. A lot of them were up there, older, in their 70s, let's say. And so, well, I'm saying that's older, right? But it's not that old. But
it's older to you.
Yeah, it's older to me. So they have a reason to get up. They're part of the local arboretum,
Right.
the local library, and they donate their hours volunteering. It's a reason to get up.
It's extremely important. You hit the nail on the head. To have a goal and a reason to get up every morning and do something.
Yeah.
And do something useful, not only for yourself, but for humanity, the people that are around you. And that leads to positivity. You have to be positive. We just talked to a couple of our buyers this morning about positive energy, and they're all into that because their business is tied into that.
Yeah.
And
it's so important.
It,
Everything you do. I mean,
you do.
And the law of attraction we believe in, and if you're positive, you attract positive. And
look,
look,
do your own research, okay, out there, folks. But let me throw this at you. If you're undergoing any kind of treatment and you're in a negative mood, okay, versus you're undergoing some kind of treatment and you are in a positive mood, even the medication that you take works better if you are in an upbeat and positive mood. Okay?
You're not giving medical advice.
I'm not giving medical advice.
No, but
I don't know
there are
anything
studies.
about anything.
No, but there are studies, right?
Well, because look, even if you are in a positive mood, potentially your arteries and veins are more
Pumping.
dilated than if you're in a negative mood and scrouching and bent over. Potentially, your arteries and veins are,
Constricted.
more constricted. You're in a negative state of mind. This is not going to work, this and that. Also, your brain has a lot to do with it. So, why not be in a positive mood somehow and let everything take a better effect if you're able to? Because, it's easier said than done. God knows what some people are going through, and they're listening to this and saying, yeah, well, that's easy for you to say, but
Well, I think one of the things about being positive is, like, we met a gentleman this morning that works with the youth, and he was saying that when you see the youth, because a lot of people have a negative view on the new generations, but he was saying that these are the future, because you had commented on that. This is the future.
Right.
They're brilliant. They're going to bring great things to society instead of, it's a negative thing. I think that's really important. And if we go back to time and how important, and I'd like for you to maybe, for our viewers, explain the hourglass again, if you could. But you said it in a conversation earlier today. You said, we're not here that long.
No.
Why not?
The older you get, the more you realize that.
So why not do good? And why not try to be positive around people as much as possible? Help people,
Correct.
So talk to us, Pablo, about your hourglass.
So this has come up because thank you to our viewers and all the people that have subscribed to the channel and have shared it and all that good stuff. We are very much overwhelmed with all the good, positive, great energy. Okay? But some people have talked about our setup a little bit, and so we have the hourglass. And I've been buying these for a very long time. And to put things in perspective, it's very easy. So the sand that's up here, okay, this is the future. We have no control over the future. We don't even know exactly how much of the future we truly have, So this is what the sand represents up here. This is the future. The sand down here, which you can see, okay, this is the past. These are our memories, all the good things that we have shared with family, friends, the things that we have done, the good memories, and there may be some memories not so good, but it's still part of ourselves, our life. That's the past. So the only true thing that we really have at the moment is this little tiny little thin area of sand that's zipping through, which is our present. That is what our present is. And so many, many years ago, somebody had mentioned to me, Pablo, you need to learn to live more in the present, and you should get yourself an hourglass. And I learned to live more in the present, get an hourglass. He didn't go on to explain it. I had to figure it out on my own, but I did. I had to read a couple things here and there, but this is actually all we have, the present.
Wow.
And if you look at it that way, you are going to take as much energy as possible to make this really count.
Yeah.
To make this present really stand out. Because if you look at the hourglass, there's a lot here in the future. As time goes by, there's a lot that gets built up in the past. But the present is fleeing. And this is the only thing we have.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, that changed me many years ago.
That's super cool. And thank you for sharing. And I think that's why it's so important when people say you got to be present. Well, it's referring to not mentally being here or here, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's thinking like, hey, in this moment, I'm in this conversation, I'm paying attention. Because a lot of times I'm guilty of it too. I could be in a conversation. Yeah, I could be in a situation and my mind is somewhere else. But when you think about it, this is all we have, this interaction, this moment. And Marcus Aurelius also says that it's time is like a river, flowing, and the present is just that very spot, and it's gone.
Woo,
You
that's
know,
deep.
yeah.
I love it.
And so we got to be in the present. And you have been a big fan of clocks. We got what is it, a grandfather clock over here. We got these are
A bunch of stuff.
pocket watches, and
Yeah.
right.
So since our viewers have mentioned about our setup, so I fell in love with pocket watches, and I found a mentor, and he's been teaching me. And this past weekend, I'm proud to say that I was able to take one apart and put it back together, mostly myself. He was there to help me in some of the, I got myself into trouble here and there with some of the gear train, but mostly, okay, I was able to do it. It's the first one that I ever take apart and put back together on my own. I couldn't have done it without him being there, but I'm very proud that I got as far as I did with his
Yeah.
help. And so it's only going
That's
to get
cool.
better. We have more coming, and so we fell in love with the intricacy and the history of these things, and the gears inside. It's just a world of their own.
Because I mean, what you're holding there is over 120 years old,
Yeah,
right?
this is over 120
What
years
year
old.
is that one?
This is, if I'm not mistaken, this was 1903.
1903.
Yeah,
Wow.
this was made in 1903, and it still works, and it still keeps. It's a
So, so how many parts are in a pocket watch?
okay. Well, that's an excellent question, and it depends on the complications. Okay, because some of these can have complications, just like wristwatches. So, but I would say, when you really take them apart, you could have near 100 pieces, near 100 parts, depending on the complications. Some of the older ones, I have a couple that are from the 1800s. Those are more, they're less parts. They even have a key. They used to be,
Oh, wow.
you had to do
Wind it with a key.
wind it with the key as opposed to the stem.
Interesting.
So and then you get lost in the development of them and their history and why
Yeah.
they were, I mean,
Why they were even created?
oh
right?
my
Which-
goodness gracious.
The railroad watches.
The railroad watches, they were actually created to avoid accidents with the railroads. And so somebody had to standardize them so that they could be called railroad watches. And there were a few things that that they did to them so that there would not be an emergency thing happening, because railroads were
Right.
crashing and people were dying. And so,
And that's the difference between a pocket watch and a railroad watch. Because
Yeah.
a pocket watch is what you have in your hand, but it's not a railroad watch. But what I have in my hand is a Ball official railroad watch.
correct.
Official standard. So part of it, our friend Richard shared
Richard, yeah.
that part of it is the boldness of the letters. I'm
Correct.
sorry, of the numbers. The
The
boldness
numbers,
of
yeah.
the numbers. So they're easy to
Easy to
tell.
see.
And they can't be. The face has to be
Open.
visible. You can't have a case.
You can't have a hunter's case.
So, yeah, stuff like that. But you're fascinated with time. See, one thing I remember early on, since I grew up in the family business, you would refer somebody to me. I think I was already working kind of on my own, but and you would refer somebody, hey, call this guy. And I would say, yeah, I'll call him. And I don't know if it was because to go against you or whatever, I didn't want to call him right away, because you would be like, call him right now. And I would say, yeah, I'll call him. Anyways, I would let sometimes the afternoon go by. I would call him the next day. Sometimes a few days would go by, and you would check in with me.
Oh,
Did you
man,
call him?
that's
Did you call him? Did you call
bad.
him? It was bad. I don't know why I was doing that, but by the time I called him, it was too late.
Oh,
There was the opportunity is while things were hot right there.
correct.
But I felt embarrassed at the time. I was just getting into sales, and so I didn't call the guy. And this is a bunch of people. And so eventually I learned, and then you said, see, you've said this multiple times, I don't have as much time as you for things to develop. I can't be following up with this person or whatever. I need things to get done right now, because I don't know how many years I have left. But as me in my 20s, I'm thinking, I can call him tomorrow. it's not a pressing matter, but your perspective was helped also to change mine, because you were like, no, I don't know that I don't know, I don't have a lot of time, I got to do things now. And then little by little I started taking on more that approach, that if there's an opportunity, you need to pounce
Oh,
on the opportunity right then and there, because if not, it's like this, it's gone, and you may not get it again. That's
I
the
agree.
reality.
I agree. You
Yeah.
know, if you put some sort of urgency into that, then you're able to make your calls quickly.
Yeah.
And we're in a business that time is of the essence. Actually, time is of the essence in everything,
Sure.
to be honest with
In the
you.
medical field,
Oh,
I mean, I remember my godmother sharing her husband, who's a heart cardiologist.
uh-huh,
I think he's a cardiologist,
uh-huh. Yes.
surgeon, right?
Yeah.
And so she said that
Cardiac surgeon.
cardiac
Mm-hmm.
surgeon, and that the difference between if they catch you at the beginning when you're having a heart attack, I think, I don't remember the time span, if it's within the first, I don't know if it's 15 minutes or 45 minutes, you guys look it up, but there's a period of time, once it's past that time, a lot of damage has already been done. But if they can catch you before, uh, in that window of time, they can save a lot of the heart and the arteries and prevent more damage. And that's what he specializes in. He's that team
Wow.
that catches you right before, right? And so that's interesting, because that goes to so many things in life. Is sometimes if you can correct, let's say, a mistake, own up to a mistake right when it happened or soon after,
Correct.
versus letting it propagate and become even worse, and then you could save a lot of uh, turmoil from
Yeah.
happening.
Well, you know, time is of the essence. So
Yeah.
I try to pull the trigger, as I say, very, very quickly on a lot of things.
Yeah.
Okay? But I wasn't always like this. You know, I've been like this for a very long time. But when I started my business, I was younger also. And so you do have that feeling, oh, this can be done maybe tomorrow or whatever.
Yeah.
But I learned very quickly that, especially in business, if an opportunity comes and knocks on your door and you don't take advantage of that opportunity immediately, you have to weigh your pros and your cons always on anything that you do. But once you look at both sides, you know,
Yeah.
pull the trigger and do it quickly.
Right.
There are some people that analyze things to such an extent that there's that saying that says paralysis by analysis. I mean, you're figuring out so much
Right.
on one particular thing that by the time you try to do it, it's gone. You know, it's
Yes.
the time,
The analytical mind.
the analytical mind.
Right. Right. Which,
There's nothing wrong with it. We need analytical minds.
We
We
need
need
it.
these people to put our satellites in orbit and figure out all those equations. We need that.
absolutely. And
So there's a balance.
yeah, it's
that
not
needs
that
to be
there's a
made.
right or wrong way of doing things, but when it comes to an opportunity, you got to be able to act fast, right?
Yes.
And if not, somebody else will take your spot,
Sure.
and that's just the way it works.
That's
Look,
right.
I mean, the other side is like, what's important to you? What are your priorities? Where do you
Correct.
want to spend your time? Because you could be a workaholic. You could be working 24/7, 7 days a week, and you want to build a business, let's say, but maybe initially you sacrifice a lot of your time, and your family, let's say, if you have one, suffers in that moment, or your relationships. But then later on, you're able to be with your family, if you're able to. But some people, if you're with your family and you're answering phone calls and emails, and then you're not really with your family, you're not present, is the way I look at it.
Well, yeah.
You're not, if because I mean, we talked about it the other day. When little kids are around, they just want your attention, right? Look at me.
Yeah.
Look at what I can do. And if we're distracted with the phone or TV or all these distractions, it takes us away from being in that moment.
That is correct. I agree.
So, but if you're building a business, you have to sacrifice.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you've been there. I've been there, late nights, sending emails at whatever
Oof.
time. I mean, whatever you needed to do. Have always thought if you can sacrifice those years early on, then you won't have to sacrifice them later on or less later on. At least that's just my mindset. As of yet, it's still to be determined, for me. But that's the way I look at it.
I agree.
However, some people.
I agree. There's I'm on social media a lot, as you know. You got me into it, and now I'm in it a lot. And so um, there's there's a saying on Facebook and on Instagram, and it's getting a good stronghold, and it's talking about it's saying, look, some young people think that when they're at 14, 15, 16, 17, um, 18, 19, 20, early 20s, in your 17s and early 20s, that this is the time to party. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
There's never been such bigger baloney. He uses another word, and I've seen it in several forms. They use other words, but to say there's never been any bigger baloney. Those are the years where you should work really hard and either get a trade or a career and really master that, so that in the later years you have the freedom to do whatever you want. However, if you mess up those early years and you don't focus and become something, okay, whether it's a trade or a career or whatever, you're going to be manual laboring the rest of your life. And there's nothing wrong with manual labor, okay? But this is what they're saying, that,
I think it's a good point, but I think it's more complicated than that.
Oh,
I
sure.
don't think, because, so you look at college, right? And a lot of schools are known for being party schools.
Right.
But you come out with a degree once you finish, but you could have partied your butt off, right? And so you come out after several years of partying, maybe you were studying abroad, maybe who knows what you were doing, and then you get to work and you start working in your mid-20s, let's say, or early 20s. You're still pretty young.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, live life. You only live once. Travel, party it up, do all that stuff. And, maybe there's no regrets if you go that route, and then you get a job, and then you get a good job, let's say, and then you don't have to be a manual labor. It could be, which, by the way, manual labor is one of the best paying jobs,
Right, it is. But see, they're not saying that you're not living life. They're just saying have a goal, realize what you want, and don't get blasted every night or whatever. I mean, it doesn't mean you can't have a life, but what they're saying is use those years
productively.
More productively. And I've heard this many times now,
Yeah.
both in Facebook, Instagram, all over the place. It's all over the place. It's taking a hold, telling young people, hey, look, party less and have a little more responsibility and think about your future, because, you can, but, I understand. I mean,
Well, no, it's just, I'm thinking like 10 years ago, I was 22.
okay. You're more.
And I just, the thing is that the temptations are to go out and party and have fun and this and that. And so, if you're able to, right? And so, but you can also work at the same time. So that's what I was doing. I was working, and then I was able to go out.
Make money to go out.
Yeah, make funny, but not spend it all or anything, but save still. But the thing is, I think there's no balance to it. See, because I think if you're 20, 21, 22, and all you're doing is working and you don't have a social life.
No, that's
that
the
may
other
not,
extreme.
Yeah, so maybe it's a
balance.
It's a balance of it. And maybe I think that what happens is that right now, maybe people are seeing that the young people are, let's say in their early teens or early 20s,
Well,
are maybe
I think
not balanced.
some of them is very extreme. Look, I've gone to a lot of seminars where very, very successful people that are on the stage, and I've heard this time and time again, and I'm not going to mention any names, but there's a lot of people that we know, very successful, and they regret having partied so much. They partied until they dropped. And they said, I wish that somebody was around me to tell me, hey, enough is enough. And they're very, very successful, and they partied themselves to death and use alcohol, and some of them even drugs and so forth and so on. And
But do you think you need to get that out of your system, or is that not a
some
real?
people believe that. And if you believe that, then you have an issue because, you know,
Because if you didn't party when you were young, you'll you'll party when you're older.
um, you know
No.
what? You need a, I don't know what the answer is.
Yeah, I guess
Okay.
we're all different. There's
Yeah,
no.
we're all different.
You just gotta find the path that makes sense for you,
Right.
and maybe it's one of balance where you do have social, but interactions and go out and but you're also working and
Or studying.
or studying
Hmm.
or both or
Yeah.
and you're a little bit more. It's balanced.
Right. And then to wrap it up, the other thing was a couple of people asked about this Egyptian statue, and that's because I've always loved Egypt, and this is Ramses II, and so I've had this for I don't know how many years, but potentially 30 years, and you know, I fell in love with all the mysteries of Egypt, and that led me to all kinds of other stuff to read, and I love that stuff, and so I thought, you know what, let's put it up. So we have, our pocket watches, our hour watch, and Ramses to uh, for our setup in our podcasts.
Absolutely, ancient Egypt is a very interesting thing
Yeah,
to
we just
you
did that
and
podcast on the Sphinx.
I didn't know this. I knew the story of Exodus and the Moses and that story, but I didn't know that Ramses II was the pharaoh in that story.
Yeah, very cool, huh?
So this is the pharaoh that didn't want to let Moses' people go.
Yeah, amazing.
Ramses II.
Yeah, and you know, it leads you into all kinds of things because history is a tremendous thing,
Yeah.
and when it comes to these ancient mysteries, there is just so much that we don't know, and even as we uncover things, it creates sometimes more questions than answers.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was a tremendous civilization, and it's all over the world. But I fell in love with the Egyptian mysteries, and so
Well, one thing about history is that the famous quote, those who do not remember their history are condemned to repeat it.
uh,
And I've noticed just from personal surveys, just talking to people, a lot of people don't know history, not only of, let's say, the United States, but of the world,
rural history.
ancient history, um, geography, how it's changed.
Right, right.
Myself included, I'm not like a historian or anything, but the stories of history, they repeat themselves. History repeats them itself, right? And a lot of the stories are the same. And you said it in one of our podcasts about Egypt that in one of the hieroglyphs,
Mhm.
there was a story of a kid that didn't want to go to school. Wasn't it in in the hieroglyphs?
Well, this was in a tablet,
Uh-huh.
cuneiform writing, in the library of Ashurbanipal, and so
Is that where's that?
well,
Persia?
in Iraq,
Okay.
yeah, and so they discovered 20,000 tablets in one and 30,000 tablets in the other.
In the other what?
There were temples.
Oh.
And because of the dried, arid climate, it allowed them to be preserved. And these are tablets that were also fired up in ovens so that they could harden over time. But it was a library. They didn't have books like we have today in libraries. Well, we don't have a lot of libraries now, but because if you look for a library, where are there libraries now? Everything's on the internet. But
There's still a few.
there's a few. But they didn't have books like us. They had tablets, and
Yeah.
they would do a cuneiform, which is the ancient form for, I think, the Assyrians and the Babylonians. And so they would write stuff
And bake it.
and bake it, and it would be, and so it was preserved. They found 20,000 and 30,000 tablets.
Wow.
And in there were all kinds of very important stuff, but there were also stuff like everyday thing. And, there was, you read about a kid that doesn't want to go to school. Even back there in the days of the Babylon, he doesn't want to go to school. He doesn't want to do his homework.
Yeah.
We
got the same issues.
We got the same issues, man,
Yeah.
that they did years.
Talking back to parents.
Oh, my God.
Not wanting to get up in the morning,
Oh,
not wanting
my
to work.
goodness gracious. And
But I think it is important for us to research our history.
Sure it is.
Because it doesn't predict. Past performance is not an indicator of future. That's what they say about the stock market. You can't just because it's gone. But it does give you an idea of what can happen when you look at all the ancient civilizations. When you look at all the different empires, that's one thing you can learn. We can learn from the mistakes that they made.
Oh, yeah.
And try to build and adjust our future.
Yeah.
So it's really important. Anything else you want to throw in about the importance of time?
No, that's okay. If you folks continue to, get a hold of us, DM us, text us, whatever it is, email us and give us ideas for the podcast, just like you guys did with our setup. We love it. And thank you very much for everything.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, guys. All right. We'll wrap it up.
All right.